What I want you to notice before we start is that quadratic equations means that somewhere we are dealing with an x squared. So in the first two examples, we can see the x squared, but in our last two examples, we would need to multiply out in order to find the x squares. Let us start with our first example. So here we have x squared minus x minus 6 is equal to 0. Now this is already in standard form. What it means to have something in standard form is to have all the terms on the left equal to 0 on the right. And this will help us to find and solve the values for x that will satisfy the equation. What we can do is apply trinomial factorization. And there are various methods that you would have learned in grade 9. The one that I enjoy is having x squared, and I take this to plus, and I use the factors of 6 to make negative x. So the factors of 6 is 1 times 6 will give me 6, or 2 and 3. But negative 3 plus 2 will give me negative 1. So I'll have negative 3x plus 2x minus 6 is equal to 0. And that allows me to see the two values of x that I need in order to have my brackets. So I'll have x minus 3, x plus 2 equals to 0. Now there are other methods that your teachers would have taught you, and you are welcome to use whatever method you learned in grade 9. Now we have x minus 3 times x plus 2 is equal to 0. And I ask myself, what value of x do I need to have in the first bracket to make the bracket equal to 0? So we say x minus 3 must become equal to 0, and that is x is equals to 3. Or I can make the second bracket also equal to 0. So x plus 2 must be equal to 0, therefore x is negative 2. Notice that I'm using or, because if I make x 3 or if I make x negative 2, the left-hand side will become equal to the right-hand side. So let us move to our second example. Here we also have a trinomial, but notice it's not written in standard form. So what I first would like to do is move the negative 15 to the right-hand side, and that becomes plus 15. And then you can use whatever method of factorization that you would like to use. This one I'm going to do mentally. So I'll have x and the factors of 15 that will help me to make minus 8 would be 1 times 15. No, I can use 3 and 5. So minus 3 and minus 5 will make minus 8. So x minus 3, x minus 5. So that's a different method of factorization that you could use by simply using the factors of the constant value and trying to build minus 8 to form the middle term. Now I have x minus 3. So x minus 3 equals to 0. Therefore, x can be equal to 3. So I move the 3 over. Or I can say x minus 5 equal to 0. And that becomes x is equals to plus 5. So remember to use or, because either x equals to 3 or x equals to plus 5 would satisfy this equation. Okay, let's move on to our third example. This is slightly different than the previous two. Here we have brackets equal to 10. Now we are tempted to make each bracket equal to 10, but that is not true. What you want to do is write it in standard form. So have everything on the left equal to 0 on the right. Before we can do that, we need to multiply out. And I like to use the method of foiling. So this would be x squared plus 2x, and then minus 7 times x, which is negative 7x, and then negative 7 times 2, which is negative 14, equals to 10. So you would have x squared minus 5x minus 14 minus 10 equal to 0. Now this is partially in standard form. We can still add these like terms together. So we'll have x squared minus 5x minus 24 is equal to 0. And now we use the factors of 24 to find minus 5x. So it can be 1 times 24, that won't work, 2 times 12, 3 times 8. So I can see 3 and 8 will make minus 5 if I make 8 negative. So when I factorize, it will be x minus 8, x plus 3 equals to 0. And now to solve for x, I'll make each set of brackets equal to 0. So x can be equal to plus 8, or x could be equal to negative 3. Our last example is a little trickier. What we can see is we have brackets on the left and a difference of 2 squares on the right. We are not going to do anything on the right hand side. Our aim is to write it in standard form, so have all the terms on the left equal to 0 on the right. So first let us multiply out, and I identify these sets of brackets as a difference of 2 squares. So when I multiply it out, I'll have x squared minus 9 minus 1 is equals to 4 minus x squared. Now what you can do is you can add up like terms. So you'll have x squared minus 10 on the left and 4 minus x squared on the right. And what I would like to do is move all the terms to the left hand side. So I have x squared plus x squared. So moving this negative x squared becomes plus x squared. Minus 10 minus 4 equals to 0. And if I add like terms together, I have 2x squared minus 14 is equal to 0. Now this is a slightly different solution. What I can see here is I have a common term of 2. So I can divide everywhere by 2. So if I divide 2x squared by 2, I'll have x squared. And then minus 14 divided by 2 is minus 7, equal to 0, which is the result of 0 dividing by 2. Can you see that I applied the same calculation on the left to all the terms on the left and to all the terms on the right? Now, some of you wouldn't have seen this type of question before, but this is actually a difference of 2 squares because we have 2 terms and a minus in between. So we have x and x, plus and minus, but this is not a square number, but we can create the square by taking the square root. So if I want to factorize x squared minus 7, it will become x plus the square root of 7 times x minus the square root of 7. Now, in order to find the values of x, I will take each set of brackets and set them equal to 0. So x can be equal to negative square root of 7, or x can be equals to plus the square root of 7. And both of these answers are valid. Remember, you're not allowed to have a negative number inside of a square root, but the negative can be outside of the square root. So therefore, both of these answers are valid solutions.